intimidating
Yes.
for people who aren't used to doing it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. There is the other issue, well, and maybe this has to do with, maybe off in the sequence, whatever, is like when the IRS agent maybe is bullying you or whatever. In other words, how is this thing progressing? There may be situations where you need to draw lines or say, huh, wait a minute, stop, time out.
Yes, a common fact pattern for me for getting new clients who are in the process of an audit, who have started the audit themselves, is that they go into the audit and they cooperate and they give a certain amount of information. They give the IRS what they've asked for, and then they walk out of that feeling, well, this is all going to be fine. And then the next letter they get from the IRS is a laundry list of additional requests, and they say, well, I already gave you this stuff, why do you want more? And then they even sometimes respond to that and get another list. It's like the more questions you answer, the more questions they want to ask. And people at that point come to me and say, when is this ever going to stop? And that's when you have to sort of take the bull by the horns and be a little bit more forceful with the IRS and understand the process, because whatever happens at the audit is not the final result. There are additional procedures, both administrative and judicial, to take it out of the auditor's hands into another person's hands and get to work to a final conclusion. But at some point you might want to say to the auditor, that's all I'm doing. You do what you have to do with what you got, and we'll take it up.
Okay. Here's one that somebody may ask from time to time. I'm sure ask you. If I bring a representative, won't the IRS think that I have something to hide?
You know, that's another one of those questions that you're never going to know. But I can tell you that in almost 30 years of practice, I have never had anyone from the IRS say that to me or to one of my clients. Well, you brought him in, therefore you must have something to hide. What I have heard from the people on the IRS is, thank God you're here, I don't have to deal with that taxpayer anymore. Because I know you're not going to yell at me, you're not going to threaten me, you're not going to beat me up. And you know what the rules are, and you understand when I tell you, that's not a proper deduction. And I'll let you explain it to your client. I don't have to explain it to him and have this person say, well, of course it's a proper deduction, you're just flat wrong, yada, yada. So I've gotten it actually the other way, that they're mostly glad to see a professional come in.
Yeah. Well, again, they have somebody then that speaks their language.
Yes.
So.
But that's not to say that someone in the IRS could say, I mean, I can't totally discard the notion that the IRS could say, well, you've brought him in, you must have something to hide. But I just don't think it happens.
Yeah. Okay.
Or at least not very much.
All right.
And let me interject one other thing.
Go ahead.
And if you do have something to hide, then you probably do need me.
Right.
Or someone like
Okay. Let's get into one of the basics here. Who's qualified to represent a taxpayer before the IRS? And what does the representative contribute to the process? So we talked a little bit about the speaking the language, so why don't you go ahead from there?
Well, the minimum qualifications are that any attorney, CPA, enrolled agent, or actuary is legally entitled to represent a taxpayer before the IRS, as long as they haven't been disbarred. But like many other professions, there are degrees of specialization. My practice, for example, I don't prepare tax returns, I don't do wills and trusts, I don't form corporations and partnerships, and I don't do divorces. All I do is tax controversies, you know, dealing with some sort of a dispute with a tax agency, the IRS, the state, whatever. So I'm very highly specialized. And there are enrolled agents that are extremely competent in tax controversy matters. CPA is extremely competent. tax controversy matters. And there are also attorneys and CPAs and enrolled agents who really should never set foot inside an IRS audit. They just don't know what they're doing, and they're not much better than you doing it yourself, and can actually hurt you. So,
okay.
So you have to be careful who you select.
Yes, yes. Yeah, so if you have like an attorney, well, for example, years ago I was dealing with an attorney that was a family law attorney. I was dealing with them about some tax issues related to a divorce. They didn't have a clue what I was talking about.
But yeah, that's more on the planning side.
It is, but what I'm trying to say though, really, it's the same situation applies in an examination, that there are some people that just, well, one, they may not have the personality or whatever. I mean, we're talking about a negotiation here to some degree, and also, again, care for protecting the rights, and that was the next thing we were going to get into. Being aware of what the rights are of the taxpayer and how to protect them, and then also, though, how to, if you will, sort of handle this IRS agent, in such a way that, in a professional way.
Yes.
So, you want to be somewhat cooperative, but also you want to be mindful of, again, your client's rights and so forth, and where to draw those lines.
Yes, and just because you're asserting a client's rights does not mean you're not being cooperative.
Yeah.
And most people in the IRS understand that.
Yeah. So, okay. Why don't you talk for just a moment about privilege, because this was one of the issues that we talked about related to when we're in this representation capacity and protecting the client's rights.
Well, the issue of privilege really doesn't come up unless there's some sort of a pretty significant problem. The most important privilege in a tax examination context is the privilege against self-incrimination, because if you have filed a fraudulent or an evasive tax return and you get selected for audit, you can quite inadvertently, or a representative can inadvertently, waive that privilege. And once it's waived, it's gone. You can't unring that bell. And in a sensitive audit situation, one has to be very careful of that. And the competency of your representative is paramount in that situation. I mean, the potential consequences ranges all the way up to jail.
Okay. Let's talk from, well, maybe we're sort of in that mode almost leading into this, and that is damage control. So, and it sort of goes back to the thing that I talked about before, that maybe the agent is being aggressive, but it may be also that I mean, maybe again we've got these sensitive issues that are just sort of there and need to be handled in a very careful way. And so, why don't we talk about that for a moment? Again, what the role is for the representative. And in this case, folks, I'm talking more for the attorney, in a sense, than the CPA, because, I mean, one, as a CPA, and I'm representing a client, when I get to a certain point, if I feel that this is that sensitive for a client, I may draw the line and bring somebody like David in, because, there are some things that, frankly, I don't feel that comfortable handling, and especially if we're dealing with a tax fraud issue or something like that. So maybe you can talk about that for a moment.